Welcome back, movie lovers. Thank you for coming to another installment of Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, John Webster, and joining me again is my co-host and the cinephile in training, Amy Blackfire. Hey, Amy, what's up?
Who is this Amy? I'm Cara Zor-El, aka Supergirl. Oh no, I said my secret identity.
And I'm an MCU fan and a Targaryen loyalist.
Very ironic for you, especially the MCU fan part.
I hope there's some people who are going to appreciate that.
Yeah, so we're representing both Marvel and DC today, so we're covering all our bases. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Yes, happy Halloween. We're doing, this is cool that we're doing this actually on Halloween day, which it's lucky that I ended up switching my schedule a little while back to Saturdays because it just worked out. And we're going to be talking about a genuine horror movie today, which is a first, although I still contend that Alien is a horror movie.
I mean, this we don't have enough time in this stream to argue about that, John. But I just want everyone to know that it was my annoying persistence that allowed him to finally talk about my favorite genre, which is horror. It is a legitimate genre of fiction, of literature, and of shows and movies. And John was like, no, we did Alien. We're never going to do anything again. And I just kept DMing him over and over again. I'm like, how about this one? How about that one? And finally, I'm like, look, The Others is a work of cinematic art. We need to talk about it.
And I was able to actually use that in my own devious way, where around the exact same time that I was thinking I wanted to bring on a co-host, and I was like, it's got to be Amy. It's got to be Amy. Just shortly before that, you were like, John, I really think you should do The Others for a stream. And then I'm like, and when I decided I was going to ask you, it's like, that's a secret weapon. I can say for Halloween, we can do The Others.
Yep. You got me. You got me. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That was your scheming worked. So, but yeah, I'm really excited. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I know it's kind of hashtag canceled this year because everything is. But I'm still having a good time here in quarantine, dressing up, drinking as usual. I am drinking some Bride of the Fox sake tonight, like a fancy girl with my pinky out. So,
and I'm going all out and having orange juice tonight.
What?
Yeah, it's so radical for me, isn't it?
So, John, this was your first time watching The Others, right?
It was. And what's interesting, I don't want to one thing I do want to say is that one of the best things about watching this was that I didn't know the ending of the film. And the ending remained a surprise. So I almost feel like I want to talk a little bit about the movie before we get to the big reveal. Because it would be easy to discuss the whole film in the context of the ending. But I do want to sort of build up to it a little bit. Especially if people who are watching this who haven't seen it, I'm definitely not saying I want you to watch a little bit and then tune out. Please stay the whole time. But if you are a spoiler phobe, I would like to be able to discuss a little bit about this film without revealing what happens, because I know I would not have wanted to watch this the first time knowing the ending. I think it was very rewarding for me to have that experience, because now when I go back and watch it, I'm always going to have that experience.
And John, you know that I don't care about spoilers. In fact, I call them content previews. But this is one of the few times where I really do encourage people to watch it for the first time completely cold without knowing anything that's going to happen. So, and my first time watching this was with my mom, just on TV. It was premiering on one of the channels around Halloween, or not premiering. It had been out for a couple of years, but I think I was, John, here we go, ready to feel old. I think I was 11 or 12, maybe, and it was scary at the time. And now that I'm older and I've seen other horror movies, it's definitely not as scary as a lot. I watched Sinister a couple nights ago and couldn't sleep. So there are definitely scarier movies out there. But the way that this builds up and the mood that is set by the fog and this old house with all these rooms, but only 3 people in it and 3 servants. I think that it's such a work of art in the way, kind of like a Tim Burton film. When you watch it, you know it's a Tim Burton film because of the mood. This is definitely kind of one of those mood setting kind of movies. And so you have that kind of constant fog, and it never really seems to lift until the very end of the movie, very, very end of the movie. Yeah. And so you really have this, and I was talking to my best friend back in Colorado last night on Zoom, and she was like, the kids freaked me out. Like the first time you see them, they just like kind of come out of the shadows and they're like, hello. Like, to me, kids are always scary in horror movies. Like, there's one thing I have learned from horror movies. It is just don't have kids in the house, because they're always going to see the ghosts and they're always going to get possessed, right? So just don't have kids. But the kids themselves set this kind of creepy mood as well. And they go without electricity, right? They go without radio and all of that. So it's also feels, and even though it's in the 40s, it feels anachronistic.
Yeah, because in the beginning, you almost, when she says she's going to go get the children, I'm not even convinced at that point that there are any children.
I know, it's like, is this some just crazy lady alone at her house being like, oh, this is my children, and it's like a teddy bear and a roll of toilet paper or something. You're just like, what's happening?
I do want to start with the very beginning, which is the opening credits for this film, because I wasn't, like, the first time we watched it, because we did a watch party, which, by the way, I'm so happy we did, because normally I like to pay very, very close attention to things. And not that I wasn't able to, but the fact that we were doing a watch party, I was sort of taking it in overall and enjoying the experience with you guys. So there were things that I didn't necessarily pick up on that first viewing, which I think was all for the better. And this is a movie that it's good to kind of have a wash over you the first time and then go pick out the details on subsequent viewings. The opening credits, basically, like, well, you have Nicole Kidman basically, talking to her children about, God and religion and all this stuff, but you got like this storybook opening of the story we're about to be told, and specifically Genesis. It's the creation myth of Christianity, specifically, right? That God created the earth, and what was it, 6 days, and then rested on the 7th, something like that. Yeah, but it's just the way, like I said, you're seeing pages out of a storybook of the story that we're about to experience. And it just adds this whole sort of creepy vibe to it. Like, this is almost like a bedtime story, but it's really creepy. Yeah, no. And that's the thing, is that you do, as you'll see throughout the movie, religion is a really big, also shout out to my mom in the chat. Hi, Mom, I love you. So religion and what happens after death is obviously a huge theme in this movie, right? Nicole Kidman's character, whose name is Grace, she's raising her 2 children in what she thinks is the correct way, which is Christianity. And she thinks that the Bible holds the answers. And it's really, a big part of the movie is realizing that they don't know what happens after death, right? And all of this confidence is just shattered. And so I think that's why this religion is really built up. It's not just to create some kind of insular feeling, which is true. It does make it feel more kind of shut in, this kind of these religious teachings and these kind of, you don't question God. But I think it also shows how Grace is really struggling throughout the movie with what death and life are. She talks about limbo, which we'll get to. But she really starts to question, and the kids themselves question much earlier than she does, right? Yes. We'll talk about one of my favorite scenes where they talk about how some people were killed because they wouldn't deny Christ, but we'll talk about that in the future. But her education of her children is really a paramount theme in this movie. Yeah, and it's kind of I don't want to say disturbing, but the way that she talks to her children throughout the beginning of the film, especially from a modern context, and this is of course a period piece taking place like right after World War II, and it's kind of frightening the way she's, you know, drilling into her children these strict lessons, but that's how she's been taught, and that's her worldview.
Mm-hmm. And I know a couple people in the chat that would probably had a lot of flashbacks when they were seeing these children's education. I know two in particular in the chat that can relate to this kind of fundamentalist Christian upbringing. So,
and it kind of puts the audience, or at least it put me on guard about Grace for the beginning of the film, because first the servants show up, which I'm the new servants, which I'm going to put up a picture of them. And you're much more familiar with the movie, so can you recall their names?
Lydia is the one who can't talk, and then we have Mrs. Mills. I want to say it's Mills. Yes, Mrs. Mills, and then oh gosh, I'm totally blanking on the old guy's name who's the gardener.
Mr. Tuttle.
Look at him. Put us both together, and we could do it. Mr. Tuttle. Yes. Yeah. So we have all three of them, and they're really, really important characters. When I was a kid, they freaked me out when I first saw this movie.
Yeah, because you kind of go back and forth on them a little.
Can you trust them? Are they going to hurt the family? Are they actually trying to help the family? You don't know the whole movie until really the very end.
And then, like I said, with the opening of the film, you're almost more standoffish towards Grace, because they come in and they're kind of, you know, exchanging some nervous glances as this mother's going on about, and you don't know why. Initially, she's talking about, you know, shutting all the doors behind them, you know, only, you know, one door open at a time. They have to lock them. It's of the paramount, you know, importance, and because things. And the way she goes to get the children, and all the lights are off. You're kind of start off the movie like, is this woman loony? Is
she a control freak, right? And she also mentions the exact times that they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? It's very structured to the point where you're kind of going, okay, if these kids really exist, right? You kind of question that in the beginning. If they exist, then she's controlling them to the point where there's no way they can have a normal childhood, right? And they're isolated. They're so isolated that, you know, they only have each other. And it's not healthy. Children need to socialize. And so you're kind of wondering, how healthy are these kids going to be? You know, when you see her with the locking of the doors, with the keeping of the curtains closed. And like I said, very structured schedule. And I think they have Bible study at the same time every day. And yeah, it's really, it's really kind of, it's unsettling, I think is the best way to put it. The first part of the movie is unsettling. And then kind of the latter part of the movie is when it starts to get creepy.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I really enjoyed about this, is because I guess it is classified as a horror movie, but it's a ghost story, and it's a
suspense, kind of psychological thriller.
It's creepy, unsettling, but it doesn't rely on like
jump scares,
shock horror moments, and which is probably why you knew I would enjoy it.
That's why I knew you would like it, because I've seen so many horror movies, John. You have I don't want to say how many horror movies I've watched. It is my favorite genre. It's a lot. But it does not rely on the jump scare. It relies on a great twist ending and on mood setting. And that's why I think, and I didn't even know, you said that it was a Spanish director, correct?
Yes.
And it reminds me of Pan's Labyrinth. How did I not put those two together? So if any of you in the chat or watching later have seen Pan's Labyrinth, you know exactly what I'm talking about, creating this mood of dread and of uncomfortable. You know, the daughter, little girl in Pan's Labyrinth is not, she's in a new situation that's uncomfortable. And you can tell that these children are in a situation that's uncomfortable. They keep asking about their father, right? He's off in the war, which has now ended, and yet he hasn't come back. So where is dad, right? And they also, as we'll learn, talk about a time when mommy went mad, when she has hurt the kids. right? And they want their dad, especially Anne. Anne especially is asking about, you know, she says that, oh, so the Anne is the daughter, and then the little boy is Nicholas, and Nicholas says, when's dad coming back? And Anne says, he's dead. But you can tell that Anne is saying that to make herself feel better.
Yeah.
I think we're thinking January 2021 for Pan's Labyrinth, by the way. So stay tuned, hit that subscribe, so you'll be the first person to know.
But I have begged her not to actually add to this schedule officially, because we already
talk about
so
control freak. I would actually have 5 months in advance prepared if you would just let me, John. But you've cut me off at 2 months of scheduling. I can do that. But any less, and I will riot. I need organization. I am a grad student. I die without it.
I do want to go back for a second, though, and you mentioned Pan's Labyrinth. I really do think that Spanish films, and specifically Spanish horror films, have a very particular sensibility. And this very much reminded me not just of Pan's Labyrinth, but of the vibe from another of his films called The Devil's Backbone, which is also a ghost story. I don't know if you've seen that one, but I'll recommend it because that's really good. And especially because that deals much more with ghosts. I felt that it had a certain kinship. Obviously different directors, so they, you know, they're have their own unique touches, but definitely that Spanish flavor is there. So
she's introducing the house to the servants. Should we get back to that? Or did you have something else to say?
No, and she goes to get the children, and the children, she goes in there and you don't know what she's going to come out with, really. But she does come out with 2 children.
A volleyball that she's painted. I'm just kidding.
But they look like you'd expect for children who've been closed up, very pale.
Very pale.
And it sets the mood for this ghost story where, you know, you have characters who almost, these poor kids who almost look like death all over.
Yeah. And if anyone's seen Under the Shadow, which is an Iranian horror film, this feeling of, because they are being bombed at that time by Iraq, and because of controls over women, she can't just take her daughter and leave the house in that film, Beneath the Shadow. And I believe that's on Netflix still. So there is this idea that we don't know exactly why, but Nicole Kidman's character, Grace, says, I can't leave the house. We can't leave. There's this idea that they are stuck there. And so whenever scary things start happening, they just have to deal, right? And we have the servants, right? And the kids go, oh, are you going to be our new nanny, right? Talking to Miss Mills. And she goes, yes, I'll be your new nanny. Like, there's no planning in advance. They just kind of show up. And they're, yeah, sure, whatever role you give us. And I remember when we were doing the watch party, and Micah was there. He's in the chat. And Micah was, I think it was Micah that was like, I don't trust these servants straight away. Like, they just came out of nowhere. Why are they just randomly there? Right? And we know that Grace says that she put an ad in the paper.
But then we find out that the ad didn't get sent out. It
didn't get sent. So they just came out of the, the fog and was like, hey, we're working here now.
Well, actually, we just happened by.
Yes, we just come here. Yeah, and that's when we learn, whenever she confronts Mrs. Mills with the letter and says this was never put in the paper, she says, okay, coming clean. We used to work here many years ago. How long? You don't know, right? We worked here many years ago, and we really have a connection to this house, and we want to be here. And it's like, okay, not scary at all. Let's keep continuing. Like, nothing suspicious.
What did I say in the chat for the watch party? I was like, red flags.
Red flags. Red flags. Here, I'll do it with my cape. Red flag. Super red flags, right? And she just trusts these 3 people with her home and with her children. But you can tell the desperation that Grace has, because she says that one day the servants that she had just up and left. And like she said, she doesn't leave the house. So she needs people to go and get food and go and get supplies. And so she desperately needed these people, and here they are. So what is she going to argue?
Yeah, and Yeah, it's just, again, it was this tug and pull the whole time, because there's times when Mrs. Mills seems very genuinely sort of concerned about her and the children, and then there's other times where you're like, nope, don't trust this lady. And especially,
and Mrs. Mills is very motherly, especially towards Anne, and she's not as strict on Anne as Grace is. So you kind of want to take Mrs. Mills' side, but then about a quarter of the way through the movie, we get Mrs. Mills talking to Mr. Is it Tullett? No, Tuttle, and she, she's like discussing things with him that obviously lets you know that they're in on something that Grace and the children aren't, and that they're kind of scheming, and you just kind of be like, oh, it's so hard to find good help these days. Kick out these servants. We can't. They're creepy spies or something. I don't know what they want, but you just know that you kind of go back and forth, like you were saying, a push and pull of, are these people here to help people? Mr. Tutt. I don't know why I thought Mr. Tullett.
Now I'm just realizing that, and this is completely off topic, but I'm thinking of the name Tuttle, and now I'm just flashing back to Sanri and the stream on Brazil, because there's a character named Tuttle in that film played by Robert De Niro. And yes, I'm plugging that stream because so few of you have watched it. It's Sanrixian. Go watch the stream. I don't care if you haven't seen the movie. Okay.
And like my mom says in the chat, we can all kind of relate to Grace right now. It's like, I can't leave the house. We might even get into some unnecessary pedantry later, so be prepared for that.
Yeah, it's not like the stream sprung off of Here Be Dragon, so why would there be off-topic banter?
I need to turn up my AC, so I will be right back.
Okay. So, yeah, so I'm basically just going to freewheel for a second. I hope you guys are having a great Halloween. Obviously, things suck right now, but you know what? We're all having fun here together, and I've had fun watching a bunch of Halloween movies over the past couple of weeks with everybody. So, okay, that wasn't too long. So
it's just right there. It's just a window unit. I just had to quickly do it. Yeah. Something about, spandex isn't really breathable. I don't get why that is. Gee, how did she save things? We love you, Dragon fam. Also, Zeus is a hoe. Just always remember.
Not everybody has the context for that.
You don't need the context, Zeus. Anyone that knows about mythology knows that Zeus is a hoe. God. So we have these very strict rules for the servants to follow, right? They have to shut, and not just shut, but lock the door after they, come from one room, shut and lock it, and then go into the next room and shut and lock. And there's a lot of rooms in this house. That's asking so much.
Curtains, we haven't mentioned the curtains.
Yes, the curtains.
Yeah, the curtains must remain closed. So the house is always super dark.
So dark. And Grace, allegedly, I want to use this term allegedly, because this is my 10th time watching this movie. I still don't believe her when she says that the kids have this photosensitivity, because it's very rare. Why would two kids have it at the same time? Like, I don't believe it, but she says that they have this photosensitivity. If the light touches them, they will die. She says that straight away. So that it's about her children's lives that they need to do all of these things with the curtains and with the closing of the door, because they need to, I think she says when she yells at them later that it's like a ship and you have to control water getting in, but with light. I wish Kelly were here, our resident boat expert. She could relate to that. But you have to close down the light every single room.
This is a question for you, Amy.
When we get to the part where the husband shows up, then yes, maybe have some drink ready. Might talk a little bit about the P word, and I'm not talking about the WAP. Anyway. I'm going to drink more sake.
Oh, God. Yeah.
You asked me to be your co-host. Just remember this was your idea.
But yeah,
hey,
because
Scott, good to see you. Sorry, I always get distracted by the chat.
Because everything is, God, it's so hard to talk without getting into
the thing.
The thing. But I will say, given the context of which everything takes place, we don't know if we can necessarily trust that this condition was always a thing.
Yes.
Because everything's sort of filtered through their current circumstances.
Yes. And do we trust Grace? You don't know most of the movie if you could trust her. And I would say it wasn't until the middle part of the movie, and this is me being a little bit harsh on Grace, but I would say it wasn't really until the middle part where you have Anne laying down, and Grace had yelled at her earlier, and Anne is asleep, but she kind of says, "Oh, will you forgive me?" And that's when I kind of was like, she really does love her children. But I was kind of hard on her, like the first half of the movie, being like, she's some crazy cultish lady who is controlling her every aspect of her children's lives, but she does care for her children. And I think we do need to acknowledge that she's doing what she thinks is best and what she's been taught is the best. It may not really be good, but
I'm sorry, Patter, this needs to come out into the light.
All right. And hysteria. All right. You guys asked for it. Hysteria, right? Comes from histo, right? The womb. Those womb be making women crazy. You're right, Potter. Us women, we're just too emotional to lead, John. Please.
Just wait until we get to A Dangerous Method. You are going to lose it with that film.
I'm just going to have a whole bottle of wine when it comes to Dangerous Method. But But patriarchy, though, it is true that we're more hard on Grace and think that she's crazier than if this was their dad doing it, we may not be as critical as we are of Grace. Because women, especially who are mothers, especially, are expected to do 100% of the work and get zero of the credit. I'm just gonna drink. You better drink to that, John. Get that orange juice.
I'm almost done already.
Oh no! You got to pace yourself with that stuff, man. It's strong.
Because I'm the one who has to worry about getting out of control.
Can you put up Micah's comment, though? I just love that. Because that's me constantly.
Looking.
The laughs in matriarchy. That's me constantly. I'm sitting over here on my feminist throne. Anyway, back to the movie. But yeah, there is definitely an element of female hysteria, which hysteria used to only mean females going crazy, by the way. And you could, in the 50s, you could just send your wife to the loony bin for not doing what you said, because that would make her hysteric.
I also think that the way the movie is structured, because first you're kind of entering this house through the point of view of the servants. And then there's we meet Grace, who seems like a very concerning figure because you're not quite sure what to make of her. And then we see the children, and we're immediately pulled in by them, especially Anne, who is a riot.
I love Anne. So and when I was watching this movie the first time, I was about the same age, if not maybe 1 or 2 years older than Anne. So I was like, that's my girl. Yes. Yes. She knows something is up with that house. And she gets in trouble for it, right?
Yeah, and then there's that scene where they're talking to
that's a great shot.
Mrs. Mills. I got her name right. Yeah. And they're alluding to something that happened. And
and Nicholas insists nothing happened. And Anne said, yes, something did happen.
Yeah, that their mother went mad.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that means.
Yes.
It's just alluded to. So another reason why we don't completely trust Grace for a lot of the film, I think, because we're not always necessarily in a sympathetic point of view with her. We're very much viewing her through other lenses. And I don't think it's until later in the film, as you said, about halfway through, when we really start to get to her point of view and understand what she's going through.
Absolutely. And, if we could, and she also, Grace also tells the servant, sometimes my children get strange ideas. So we automatically go, okay, she discounts her children then. And we want to be on the kid's side because it's a horror movie. So if someone says that they're seeing ghosts, you want to be like, yeah, listen to them. It's going to be too late by the time you believe them. That's a classic horror movie trope. And so if you don't mind, J-Dubs, I would just like to talk about the first kind of paranormal experience that they have. Mm-hmm. What happens is she is one of my favorite scenes. They're reading about this story from the Bible, where the Romans had captured some Christians, and they said, deny Christ and you'll live. And they said, no, we won't. And then they were killed. And Anne giggles. And she goes, if they just would have said they didn't believe it in Christ, then they would have lived. And then Grace looks to Nicholas, the son, and says, what, would you deny Christ too? And he goes, yeah, I would. Right. And then the mom goes, oh, okay. So you would, and then Anne goes, oh, but I would believe in my heart, but I would say that I don't so that I could live. And she goes, but what about what happens after? And they go, after? She goes, yes, the afterlife, right? You would go to hell, or she talks about this children's limbo, right? And so there's this life beyond that. How horrifying is that,
by the way? The concept of children's limbo, it's like.
Right, and Anne talks back later because she's smart and she reads, and she said, I read children's limbos for children that aren't baptized, which is canon. That's what children's limbo is according to the Christian canon. And so Anne, reads. She knows what's up. But she says, oh, you would be damned later. And they have this really good part where she goes, where the kids go, oh, and she goes, oh, and they do it together. And it's a really great scene. And she goes, you know what? You guys need to do your lessons separately. So she locks Anne into the music room and leaves Nicholas where he is. And this is where we also get Anne making fun of Nicholas for the first time-ish, where he goes, Mommy, I want to kiss. And she goes, Mommy, I want to kiss. Mommy, I want to kiss. You already get this dynamic of Anne being the brave one who's making fun of Nicholas for being a baby. And look, I'm an only child, but I have seen siblings interact, and that's a very common. The older ones kind of making fun of the younger ones for being babies. But we have them in the separate room. And so Grace goes about her business, and she hears a child crying. And who does she think of first? Not Anne, but Nicholas. He's the younger one. He's more prone to cry. So she goes, and it's not Nicholas. And he goes, Mom, I haven't learned the lesson yet. Like, you've come in too late. And so finally, then she goes, oh my gosh, then if it's not Nicholas, then it has to be Anne. So she runs to Anne, and she's still hearing this kid crying, right? And it's a faint noise, but it's obviously a child crying. And, anyone with motherly instincts would want to go to that child. And so she goes to Anne, and then Anne kind of says the same thing as Nicholas, like, Mom, I'm not ready yet. It's not been 30 minutes, right? Because she gave them 30 minutes to learn the lesson. And so she's in the music room, and she goes, Anne, tell me if you're crying. She said, Mommy, I would tell you if I were crying. I'm not crying. It wasn't me. It was that boy. She goes, what boy? And this is the first paranormal experience that the family has. And she goes, it was that boy, Victor. He says his parents are going, they're touring the house and they're going to move here, and he doesn't want to live here. And then Grace shuts her down automatically. Don't tell lies, don't say this. And she says, I saw him. He was here, right? And like I said, don't have kids in horror movies because they always see the ghosts.
Well, and right? That's another element that recurs in a lot of these stories. Talking about Pan's Labyrinth again, this idea that children can see the things that adults can't.
They're more open, right? Whereas adults, especially adults like Grace, have a very rigid way of looking at the world, and they shut themselves off to paranormal experience.
And I also want to talk about the bedroom scene.
When I was a kid, that scared me so much, and I got my heart fluttering a little bit, right? So we know these curtains need to be closed, right? This is the one you're talking about, correct?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, John, take it away. I don't want to. It's not Amy Blackfire film, so.
Well, it's just creepy. It's so creepy. The curtains are open. Nicholas is like, "Why'd you open the curtains?" And
she goes, "It wasn't me. It was Victor."
Victor.
And what I love about this scene. Is the way that they do the camera angle. You can't tell if Anne is making up the Victor voice or if it's really there.
And it kind of does look like her when the curtains are opened back up.
Yes.
So, and Nicholas accuses her of putting on the voice.
And you can't quite tell, but
yeah.
J-Dub,
it's plausible.
But I will argue whenever she goes, Victor, Nicholas doesn't believe you. Touch his cheek so he'll know. And Nicholas tightens up just like you tighten up when you're watching a scary movie. But I will say that hand that touches Nicholas does not look like a little girl's hand. That looks like a little boy's hand. So if you look really carefully, you can, at that point, I think if you're a very careful viewer, you can then surmise that it is not indeed Anne doing this. There's something going on. But we do see a little boy's hand touch the cheek, and Nicholas screams, right? And then Grace comes in, and oh my God, she gets on to Anne so hard. And like, as someone who grew up in a house where my parents were not very harsh with me, that was like, whoa, man, she is reaming Anne's butt right now. Like, I'm done with you. I'm done, right? I'm finished. I won't do it anymore, right? And so Anne has been completely shut down. And she goes, no, I just wanted to prove to Nicholas that Victor's real, right? And Grace takes it as she's scaring her little brother. If you completely rule out paranormal, then yeah, that's what it is. It's just the older sister being mean. But is it?
But that perspective does not last for very long, because Grace comes to notice some stuff for herself when she thinks, because she thinks that Lydia is making noise
and
upstairs.
That is the servant, right? And she's sitting there doing very, very womanly, doing her embroidery. She tells Mrs. Mills, oh, will you tell Lydia, right, to stop making such a noise? And then Mrs. Mills goes, yes, right away, ma'am. And she leaves. And then she's sitting there having her tea, being very English, doing her embroidery, right? And then it's just like someone is running above her, and it shakes the chandelier. It's I think it's actually, in my opinion, the best shot of the whole movie is this part. The way that the camera pans and it shakes the chandelier, it's really, really well done. And she is just like, oh, I've had enough of this. And she gets up, and oh my God, Nicole Kidman. Can we just talk about her facial expressions for just 1 second? When she looks out the window and you don't know what she's seeing, she has this look of pure horror, and she is so good at it. Nicole was there's excellent casting in this movie, perfect for this role.
Yeah, and because her eyes just do a lot of the acting and conveying what she's feeling. And it's at this point when she starts to consider the possibility that there's other stuff going on.
Exactly, because when she looks out the window, there's Lydia, and there's Mrs. Mills telling her, hey, we can't hear, but it's obvious that she's saying, hey, Grace has told me, don't be so loud and all of that, right? And so Nicole Kidman, who is Grace realizes that it's not Lydia making this noise. Who is it?
Yeah, and Stephen, you can't fool us twice.
Stephen, we know it's you.
We know.
Just don't, but Sansa is best.
Yeah.
And don't at me, Sansa haters, because there's a special place in hell for people like you. Sorry. Sansa, Catelyn, I'm not saying they never did anything wrong, but they are wonderful characters, and women are gray area too, all right? We're not either perfect or succubus demons. Okay, I'm sorry, just keep going. About this movie, not about Asloff. But my channel is all about A Song of Ice and Fire and his Dark Materials, so check it out if you want some of that content. I do a lot of great feminist commentary. Anyway.
That's the real reason.
That's the reason I became a co-host.
See, that's when I take my drink.
Sansa is best, though. I love that girl.
Which, by the way, to veer off topic for a second, I have talked to you about the fact that I do want to actually do some Game of Thrones coverage at some point. Yes. It'll be about topics that we cannot tear each other's heads off.
We were talking about picking our favorite episodes and then kind of breaking them down. And all of mine are going to be from season 3. All that Harrenhal gore. I'm the gore queen. I'm here for it.
And I am undoubtedly going to. I'll pick many episodes, but I really want to talk about Blackwater. Oh, especially diving into all that great Sansa and Cersei material.
Yes. And Sansa has the best one-liners of, "Oh, I'm so stupid. Of course you'll be right up front in the vanguard. They say my brother does that, and he's not even he's a false king. He's a usurper." Oh God, I love it. Anyway,
okay,
I'm sorry. We do have Game of Thrones content coming. #JoeF2021 coming at you.
if
Joef is John Webster film. I'm making it canon. Hashtag Joef.
I'm sorry.
Oh God, let's not talk about season 8.
I'd love to, but
we also need to talk about X-Men in the future because that's something that we both enjoy as well.
Let's.
But back to the others. And I don't mean the ice zombie others.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
You came for off-topic discussion, right, chat?
But then she goes into the room, and you get into this, and this continues throughout the film. Of she opens a door, goes in a room, the door closes or creaks open.
Oh God, the doors, and that's the thing that I love about this movie is it doesn't do the jump out scare, but it does the doors, and I can't with the doors because like I open the door, I close the door, anything else happens to the door unless the window is open, ghosts.
Yeah. And she starts just taking all the cloths off of, all the statues and stuff. And oh God, and this is going to be great to talk in the context of the later reveal, which I want to hold off for just for a little bit longer. But I will say that like all this stuff just takes on such a different context later.
Everything does.
Film.
Yeah. But it's a room where everything's been covered up, right? There's so many rooms in this house to help with the cleaning. They just cover, rooms that are unused. They're going to cover up the furniture so it doesn't get dusty. But it makes it really scary because if you're a first-time watcher, she keeps taking the tarp off of, the sheets off of things. You're like, ghost? No. Is it going to be ghost? No. Ghost? No. Like as a watcher of a horror film, you're like, oh, is it going to be a ghost the whole time?
I'm sorry. You know what it reminded me of? Really reminded me of that episode of The Office where Dwight starts scaring the crap out of Jim, and Jim starts taking down all the snowmen in the parking lot, and it just makes him so terrified. Wow, that's off topic. But
so she's and she eventually, and this is another great shot. I'm sure you can agree with me, J-Dub. She finally, the last thing she does is take off a sheet, and it's a mirror. And she sees herself, and we don't get we don't know what she's thinking, but I've always read that scene to be like, okay, girl, you going crazy now. Like you are literally taking sheets off of the furniture in your house. Do you need a therapist? Like, whoa.
But then there's stuff later when it ceases to, I think this is a different scene, but it ceases to be like creaking doors, like gently opening and closing. And at a point later in the film, a door like literally like just slams.
That's the music and piano scene, which we have to talk about in detail. I love that scene. That's the only, I would say, jump scare. Maybe it doesn't actually jump out at you, but when it slams and the music, that's the only time where I jump in the movie if I don't expect it. But so she has that scare, right, with everything covered up. And then we have, after that, she kind of interrogates Anne. And this is the first time that Grace looks like she's starting to believe her daughter a little bit, right? And Anne is like, Mommy, I made a drawing of the ghosts. And you're just like, what? It's like, oh, here's a mommy and a daddy and a little boy, Victor. And then there's this old blind woman, and I've seen her. And she writes how many times she's seen her. She's like, I've seen the old woman the most. And I'm like, that's not creepy at all. Oh my God.
Of course, it's the old creepy woman that's appeared the most.
Of course, it would be though. Of course, it would be that, and it's really creepy. And she has like the drawing. She has like this crazy like frizzed out hair, and she looks like a crone, right? Very creepy.
Yeah.
And the crone is actually, for those of you that are interested in the paranormal, the crone is a very common reported sighting, which is. I'm about to freak you out a little bit. It is Halloween, so get ready. Many people have reported when they have sleep paralysis, waking up and not being able to move and seeing an old, wrinkly woman standing by their bed. And that's actually what that drawing reminded me of, was the crone.
Speaking of which.
Not the scene!
I mean, it's funny because even though I'd never seen this movie before, I had seen like parodies of this scene.
Yes.
But it didn't keep the scene from being, creepy.
Can we talk about the music room scene first, since it technically, but we will absolutely get to that, because I still scream at that scene. I'm like, why? Oh, and I remember during the watch party, you were like, WTF when you see her hand. Anyway, we'll get to that. But the music room scene, right? We hear from Anne that Victor's dad is a pianist, right? And so she hears someone playing the piano, and she goes into the music room. And the second that she puts her hand on the door and moves the door handle, it stops. And she goes in there and she's like, okay, no one's, playing on the piano that she can see, right? And then the door behind her shuts a little bit, like quietly, not like a lot. She was like, the heck? And she shuts and locks the piano keys, right? And then she kind of investigates the door. Totally normal, J-Dubs. Nothing scary is going to happen. She's working on the door and she's like, okay. And then boom, right in her face. It slams shut and she falls back. And she has also, I forgot to mention this, she has a shotgun. That's when you know it's going down. Because she has a shotgun and she's like, I'm not dealing with these intruders in my house, right? And so that happens and she's like, what the heck? And it locks. And so she's like, jumbling with her keys to open it up. And she goes in. She doesn't see anything, but the piano cover is open again. And she had just locked it. And that's a really, really great scene.
Which, can be explained, obviously.
The wind, John, the wind. Unlocked and then lifted up. Piano keys.
At one point, Mrs. Mills is like, this is an old house, ma'am. Lots of creaks. And it's like, no, that doesn't explain that.
Which I grew up in an old house. There are, the house is settling, all right? But that kind of thing can't really explain away as far as the wind, And yes, that is another huge horror movie trope. My philosophy is ignore it. Just go back to what you're doing. You don't want to see the ghosts.
But there is a reason for it. See, a lot of times my issue with horror movies is that why wouldn't you get out of the place that's really creepy? But this is their home, but also there's the fog, which, as Mrs. Mills says, she won't get far because of the fog.
Of the fog.
To which Mr. Tuttle says, oh yes, the fog.
Oh yes, the fog. Mr. Tuttle is like, ugh. I don't know. He's the ultimate creepy old guy, honestly. But yeah, that is the next scene we get, right? Oh no, actually, we get can we talk about the communion dress scene, which we were alluding to earlier? Okay, this part of the film is really creepy. So they're preparing for their first communion. This is, it's totally cute, her first communion dress, which also, all right, get your drinks. Get your drinks ready, because the first communion dress, especially for women, represents the bridal gown because you're getting married to Jesus. Patriarchy.
I just want to say, I'm sorry, but I'm already thoroughly creeped out in this movie. That's not cute or anything.
It's not cute.
That's just
not
freaky.
Cute. Yeah, no. Why would you put a veil over your daughter's face when there's ghosts in the house? Don't do that. Don't obstruct people's faces. No.
And so she's like, Mommy, just let me,
be pretty in my dress. And she's like, okay, no sitting, no leaning on walls. As always, she's a little controlling, right?
And then you get all this stuff with, Anne dancing around, and she's looking thoroughly creepy.
That's my favorite GIF too. If you type in the others, one of the GIFs is Anne circling with her dress, and that's chef's kiss. So good.
And so eventually Grace comes back in the room. She's like, all right, time to take it off. Oh, but Anne, I told you not to sit down. And then she sees it. The old woman's
hand playing with the puppet. Oh my God. And then she goes up and she looks at it and she goes, where's my daughter? And this old woman is speaking with Anne's voice. And she's like, Mommy, I am your daughter. It's like, nah, you are not my daughter. No, you're not.
Instantly, this became like a classic scene for
Classic.
me, and I'm never gonna forget it. Because
Never gonna forget it.
as you said in the chat, I was like, WTF.
Yes, that was my favorite John moment. Is you're like, what, WTF, WTF, and I was like, oh, just you wait, because this old woman is very important to the plot of the story. But yeah, it was, oh my God, horrifying. The first time I saw it, like I said, I was around Anne's age, and I was like, what if because the way I read it was like, it's a little girl being possessed by this old lady ghost thing. So it's like, what if I, as an 11-year-old, am randomly possessed by an old lady? Like, it's really scary. So scary. And Nicole Kidman's character, Grace, goes mad, right? And she starts attacking what she thinks is an old woman. And yet, Anna is right. This scene did get parodied in one of my favorite satirical movies, which is the Scary Movie series. Because I'm such a horror fan, I really enjoyed those because I'm a huge also satire fan. And so it put like two of my favorite genres together, and they get all the tropes correct. And yeah, this scene was parodied in Scary Movie.
That's where I recognized it from. But the scene is so effective that even knowing the parody, it didn't ruin it for me. It's iconic.
Yeah. Just thinking about it gives me chills.
She's like, what have you done with my daughter? And
he was like, I am your daughter.
And she, attacks her, and you know what's coming, that it's going to be, again.
And she rips the veil, right? And she's worked months on this dress. So there's also this labor that's gone into it. And then that's out the window. She rips the veil off. And then she sees Anne's face, and she's horrified. She's scared of her own mother. And then Mrs. Mills to the rescue. She comes in. And Anne goes, she's going to kill us. She's trying to kill us. I swear she's going to kill us. And it's just like, oh my God, this is frightening for a child.
Gee, I wonder if that's foreshadowing.
Is it, John? No, there is no foreshadowing in this movie. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So yeah, and that's once again where Grace has kind of been stepping back from, first she's thinking, something supernatural is going on, and then she's like, no, everything's perfectly normal, and this is where she's like, I could have sworn it, it was somebody else, and so we do need to talk about when she decides to leave the house to go for the priest.
Yes. And she says we need the priest to bless each room, right?
And actually, you know what?
Once again, going back to her religion.
Yeah, actually, before we get to that, because we're going to be able to launch into a whole conversation about the husband, I do want to stop real quick and do the mid-roll. Just, if this is the mid-roll, you and I have a tendency to go along. So who knows?
7 hours, people, get ready.
But... I will just say
it's not about Kira, so we'll probably keep it to around 2 to 3.
Yeah, that's true. Our schedule has shifted a little bit since I teased it on Here Be Dragons for the anniversary stream. Originally, next week was going to be The Nightmare Before Christmas, but because we kind of moved some scheduling around so that we can have all our guests come on. So next week is actually going to be a return of the Focus On series, and we're going to be focusing on director Quentin Tarantino. And we're going to give an overview of all his films, but we're mostly going to be centering on some of our personal favorites, which are the 2 volumes of Kill Bill, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight. Which, can I just say, I'm really psyched that you want to talk about The Hateful Eight, because
I saw it in theaters and I loved it. And then I read the reviews of it later, and I was like, you guys just don't know what's happening then, because you're terrible. I don't even pay attention to critics because I think they're always wrong.
Yeah, so I'm just really happy that somebody loved it as much as I
love The Hateful Eight.
I thought it was great. And obviously, Kill Bill is such a touchstone of my youth. That's when I discovered Tarantino.
And Stephen has a really good point about saying rest in peace to Sean Connery.
Yeah.
If we can just take a moment to reflect on that.
Yeah, there's really no way for me to sum up what Sean Connery meant to me. And I know there's probably some stuff about his personal life, which would be a whole another bite of worms, which I've heard, but just focusing on his career as an actor and the fact that so many of his performances were iconic for me growing up.
And wasn't he knighted? Shouldn't we be saying Sir Sean Connery? That's awesome.
Like, it's impossible for me not to think of him as Indiana Jones' dad. I think that's why Last Crusade has always been a favorite of mine, is because just because of that father-son dynamic. And I love just, there's that moment where he thinks that Indiana has gone over the cliff, and he's talking about all the things he never said to him. And then when he realizes that, Indiana survived, there's that hug between them. I just love all that stuff, and him calling him Junior. And it just really meant a lot for me growing up. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, of course, he's the best James Bond.
I was just about to say, yeah, Bond. He's definitely my canon Bond. And I also just have to shout out for him being Scottish, because I have Scottish ancestry on both sides. My last name is a terribly misspelled Scottish name, because when my family came over, they weren't the best at writing in English. But yeah, so I've always thought that he had a lot of talent, definitely. And we obviously grieve and want to say, to his family that we our sympathies go out to them, of course.
And and Anna mentions that Highlander is, it was one of those franchises that I grew up in loving.
Yeah.
And even though I was more of a fan of the series than the film, you cannot, I can't praise enough his performance as Ramirez in that film, because he's one of the ultimate mentor figures, even though he is a Scotsman playing an Egyptian, acting against a Frenchman playing a Scotsman.
What
the whole thing is,
also, I just looked at his Wikipedia page, and you probably already know this because you're such a Lord of the Rings fan. He was offered the Gandalf role.
Apparently, which I have to say, I don't know if I can. It's like,
not speaking ill of the dead.
You shall not pass.
You know what? Everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. Maybe let's just put it that way. Because what we did end up getting with Gandalf, which, by the way, plug for December, we are going to cover all 3 Lord of the Rings movies here on JOWF, John Webster Film. So be ready for that.
And of course, I'm going to be doing my interview with Doug Adams, who wrote the book Music of the Lord of the Rings films, and that'll be coming next month in November. So look forward to that.
I'll get a Saturday off. Oh yeah.
And Stephen brings up Draco in Dragonheart, another, seminal moment of my youth. That was fantasy that I loved before I even really knew what Lord of the Rings was. I mean, I'd heard Hobbit when I was younger, but I wasn't a fan of Tolkien at that point. And Dragonheart was...
I can't imagine you not being a Tolkien nerd. I just, there was no life until you became... There was no J-dubs until he was a Tolkien nerd.
And so that team up with him doing the voice of Draco with... why am I drawing a blank? Dennis Quaid in playing Bowen in that film. The two of them were so great together. And even though visual effects have kind of moved on, Draco is still one of my favorite dragons out of any movie. I'm trying to think of some other stuff just that comes to mind. His cameo at the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He plays Richard.
Which you and I have both agreed that that's actually a really good movie, and people are too harsh on it, are really too mean about that.
And I'm not going to...
Okay, now the next 3 hours we will be covering why this movie is good.
Jolie is going to might do me grief about, the real Richard, when he died, what kind of person he was. But in the context of Prince of Thieves, when he shows up at the end and he's like, hold, I speak. And the music builds up and Marion is like, Richard. And he gets off the horse and the music, rises. He's so regal. Sean Connery was such a regal actor. And, mention, in that vein, also First Night when he played King Arthur, and Jerry Goldsmith's music for that film, pretty much every time he appeared on screen, he's like this vision of a king. And I think Sean Connery even told Jerry Goldsmith that he wanted that music to play every time he entered a room.
And Mike also asks, is this a Christmas present from you guys, talking about covering Lord of the Rings? Yes, it is. You will have a very Merry Christmas with us on John Webster Film. And we're also going to cover the Muppet Christmas Story.
Yeah, the Muppet Christmas Carol, which is going to be so fun. I watch that every Christmas day. So there was no way we weren't going to cover that.
Maybe next Christmas we'll get my choice, which is A Christmas Story. You'll shoot your eye out, kid. So.
And honestly, if it wasn't for the Lord of the Rings coverage, we'd just be doing Christmas movies.
Just Christmas for oh my God, Love Actually. Hello, Kira. Yes, please.
Why would we want to cover Love Actually?
Also, check out the Knights of Kira on Instagram and Twitter. Plug.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the mineral.
But I do want to just say it again in closing about Sean Connery. Just a marvelous actor and a titan of cinema, and it's hard to think of anybody who had more of an impact, when I was growing up as far as actors. So I just want to say rest in peace, sir. You will be missed. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump back. Oh, wait, no. Not even done with the middle.
I have a channel. What are you talking about?
Do you? I was
do.
nervous.
John, thank you for asking. I have a channel, Amy Blackfire. That's AEMY, and then Blackfire with a Y. And I talk about specifically non-Western symbolism in A Song of Ice and Fire, His Dark Materials, and more. I am a PhD student studying Chinese literature, so non-Western symbolism is my thing. And I think that a lot of our understanding of a lot of this literature, that even though it's written by Western, specifically white men, I think that we can really enrich our understanding of it by adding these Eastern kind of meanings to a lot of what we talk about. So what do I have coming up, you might ask? I am going to have the links on my channel. They are wonderful. They have a blog on WordPress that's all about queer and feminist analysis of these series. And we're going to talk about Orientalism and colonialism in His Dark Materials. I'm also going to have them back on to talk about Lyson Omar from A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm going to have Rohan on to talk about Cersei and her parallels to the last Empress of China. And I'm also going to have my co-author from my first ever collab essay that I did a couple of months ago. We're going to have her on to talk about Dark Star. What is he up to? Is there something more going on there with him and Duran? Ooh, we will answer all of these questions. So I have a lot coming up. I am also going to be on Voice of Geekdom to talk about His Dark Materials. So shout out to Dan. Check out his YouTube channel. So I have a blog, and you can read these essays, or you can hear me read them on my YouTube channel. And sometimes, especially lately, I have a panel discuss it with me. And my latest video I am extremely proud of. It is with me and All Hail the Night's Queen, aka Jolie. She is in the chat. And we wrote an essay on the Shade of the Evening Tree and the Hammer of the Waters. And we had the amazing, both of them amazing, Archmaester Emma and Crowfood's daughter on to discuss. And we had a great time talking about it. We talk about Drogo stuff. We talk about the relation between the weirwood trees and the Shade of the Evening. And I think we really talked about a lot of major themes in the series. And I look forward to bringing you guys more content. And I also look forward to talking about more movies on John Webster Films. So please like and subscribe, not only this channel, but also my channel. Thank you very much.
Paydar, I don't know if I can do that.
I can't do a Scottish accent at all. I'm sorry, Potter.
No. Especially, I would not.
You know what? Send him the StreamYard link. Let's have him on here with his Irish accent.
Yeah.
You're being tapped in, Potter. You volunteered.
And actually, speaking of Highlander, that may be something that we have Potter on for, although he and I are doubtful as to whether we should subject you to Highlander because it is quite dated. So
I love Highlander.
You do.
I do.
This is something I did not know about.
Yes, it is dated as far as gender, but I like it a lot. Are you kidding me? That speech that he gives?
Okay, I'm sorry if it wasn't evident already. Like, you and I were meant to be friends because like, we just have so much in common. I love it.
And I'm like, I'm going to take a radical stance and that I'm for Scottish independence. Like, screw you, UK. Just saying. Like, the Scots fought for their freedom and continue to fight, and they should get it. So that is the official stance of me, not necessarily John Webster film.
So, Patter,
disclaimer.
You've heard it. You're coming on for Highlander, and that's all there is to it. This is great.
I love that movie.
Good. Have you ever seen the series?
There was a series?
Yeah, television series.
No.
Which is the first season is a bit tough to get through because it's not the highest quality, but the series had a lot of really compelling characters.
No, I've just seen the movie. So also, bye, Mom. I love you.
Yeah, you gotta watch the series. It is dated. It's very much a 90s television show, but
I love that 90s aesthetic. I'm a 90s baby.
Yeah, but it's great. I love it. I have all the DVDs for it and everything. So physical media.
Physical media. Sorry, I have to give you crap about that every time. All right, are we done with the mid-roll, John?
Yeah, like that was the most epic mid-roll I've ever had. So I'm very
I'm excited for Highlander. I guess I didn't put it on my list that we have going on. By the way, the list that we have of future movies is now almost at 150. So I don't think we're going to run out of ideas. Also, we have, like John said, we have that Quentin Tarantino Focus On series. If you have not seen our Focus On Keira Knightley stream, you need to watch that. Me, him, and Jared, who is totally not an actor hired by John. We are the three OG Knights of Keira, and we talk about Keira's films and her amazing acting talent, and maybe thirst over her just a little bit. Just a little.
You can find us, the Knights of Keira, on Twitter. Yes. Here's your address.
We're also on Insta.
Yep, we have a Tumblr and an Instagram, and our Instagram is actually growing. We're getting We're getting a lot of fans and followers on there. So yeah, hopefully
we post stunning pictures of Keira and our opinions or our little commentaries on certain movies. And we're going to do Colette soon, right?
Yeah. And Jared will be returning for that stream.
John finally saved up enough money to hire Jared again.
So that'll be coming at the end of November. Okay, is there anything we didn't
I just want to show off my cape. Okay, I'm good.
And it really is epic. As we said, you're repping DC, and I, as a huge MCU fan.
You're such an MCU fan.
For Halloween,
We haven't had hours and hours of shitting on MCU or anything, except for X-Men, which is the best thing ever created. I will die on that hill. Okay, back to the movie.
Okay, so, and markedly, I do remember where we left off as
the creepy old lady scene.
Well, also getting ready to talk about the return of the husband,
which I believe was it you or Micah that were like, I was not expecting that. And actually, it might have been the person that I was watching it with this week. Never mind. So, and it was my boyfriend. We were watching it together, and he was like, "I was not expecting that." When all of a sudden, boom, the husband's back,
and he
comes out of the fog,
and he doesn't look creepy at all.
No, this is John. I have no idea what you're talking about.
And he's played by Christopher Eccleston, who is, of course, known by many as the first of the new line of Doctor Who,
the Doctor,
a show which I really have not given a fair shake. I've
Which
seen
Leaf gives you plenty of crap for, as well she should.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of that first season with him in the role, but I think because I wasn't watching back when it was on, it seems a little bit dated, so it's hard for me to get into it. But I am going to sit down and go through all the episodes at one point here when I have free time, because there's not much we have to do. Amy.
David Tennant is the best doctor. Don't at me.
But he shows up as she goes off to see the priest. And it's just creepy how he just comes up out of the fog. And
out of nowhere. And that's the thing, is she's like, I'm going to, and she gets lost right before she meets him because the fog becomes thicker. She's like, I'm going to go to the priest. She has this mission that all of a sudden, my, left for dead husband comes out of nowhere, and she forgets about going to the village completely.
I did say the first in the new line of doctors, which is when the series was kind of restarted back in 2005. So
Jenna has some hot takes on this too. She says he was the first doctor worth watching. I love my sassy friend.
But so he's from the war, thought to be dead, but he seems very out of it. He's just says he's been out there trying to find his way home, and this kind of cools things off for Grace as far as being concerned about the ghosts, and so this is her priority. She brings him.
She's gonna get it on. I mean, have a very romantic reunion with her husband that she loves so much. Right? The one time that she relaxes is when she's getting some. That's all I have to say.
And what I found really interesting is Mrs. Mills' reaction when he comes in. She's very taken aback.
Yeah.
And of course, when Mr. Tuttle says, "What do you think? He suspects anything?" And she says, "I don't think he even knows where he is."
Yes, that's an amazing line. And that's where you're going, wait, what? That's, one of those lines that's kind of sprinkled throughout the movie that makes you really wonder what was going on.
And I remember just thinking, I don't even know if this guy is really here. Is he a figment of her imagination, but other people are seeing him? There's ghosts in the story, so is he a ghost? And so a lot of these questions get raised, and I like the way it's framed when they're talking with each other after he confronts her about what happened, which we still don't know all the details about. And she goes over to lay on the bed, and a lot of those shots are framed so that you're cutting back and forth, but he's not necessarily in all the shots with her. So there's this kind of separation, almost as though he's not actually there with her. So it adds to this kind of unnerving feeling, which by the way, I haven't taken the opportunity to say that this is a gorgeous film, the way it's shot. And the cinematography and just the way it contributes to the overall vibe of the film. It's beautifully done. And you said the movie is a work of art, and it really is.
Yeah. And the father is also now, the kids are so happy to see him. They hug him, but he's also a new source of comfort for the kids. And they can go to finally someone else other than the servants, right? Because the servants are employees of Grace. They can't really do anything. But after the scene where little Anne gets attacked by her mom in the dress, because her mom Grace thought that she saw this old woman, right? Anne goes to her father and tells her about the abuse that she suffered by her mom. And so we have this kind of nice reunion at first between Grace and her husband, Charles. But then we also get where Charles kind of brings down the hammer and he says, "Anne told me what you did." And you're like, oh, it's going down. It's all out in the open now, right? Is this untold secret? And he also says he's leaving again. He was there for 5 minutes, and he was depressed the whole time. He wouldn't get out of bed. He wouldn't eat, right? He was just, for lack of a better term, a ghost the whole time, right? He wasn't really there. And he did a really good job as far as kind of making this kind of, he was dazed kind of the whole time, you know? Like, you thought that, you know, the characters that we've already met didn't feel like they were really there. This guy definitely feels like he's not there.
Funny enough, he feels most present when it's about his children.
His daughter.
When he reunites with them, and also when he's talking about them with Grace. So you really sense that paternal relationship is something that really ties him there and is like a tether.
Yes. And one point I want to make, the second that he is there, he is now the master of the house, and Grace is downgraded as the mistress of the house. So whenever, you know, he's there, or the servants think he's there, patriarchy, right? Mm-hmm. Mrs. Mills asked, what does the master think of this? She goes, he's leaving, right? It's like, hey, hold on. I'm the one that hired you. All of a sudden, some guy with a penis comes in, and it's all of a sudden, I'm not the master of the house anymore, right? And so you really have these gender dynamics going on. But at the same time, we have seen what Grace is like. And if you reject the ghost theory, then it looks like Grace is just going crazy, right? It looks like she saw this old woman and hurt her daughter, and it's just because Grace is going nuts again. That's what I think a lot of first-time viewers would probably think, right? So it looks like the man coming in to correct the ship, right? But then he's barely there, and then he just up and leaves. So what good is he for? That's what I'm saying, feminism.
So he takes off, jumps back in his TARDIS, and leaves. And then things start to come to a head. Now I've just seen this movie for the first time, so some events are kind of jumping around. Well, what is the event that precipitates the confrontation between Grace and the servants? I'm having a hard time.
The curtains are gone.
Yeah, it's the curtains.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing where they disappear, and she's, you know, and she starts to lose it because
she thinks that her children's lives depend on it.
Yeah, and she's like, I've told you why the curtains are necessary, and Mr. Tuttle's like, oh yes, somebody's taking the curtains, and they're acting like like it's no big deal.
One of the and these child actors, I just have to give it to them. They are amazing in this movie. Anne goes, find the curtains, and this just that's one of the best one-liners out of this whole movie. And so, you know, in the kind of the earlier part of the movie, she had the servants check the house when she thought there were intruders, and now she's like, check the house for these freaking curtains. Where are the curtains, right? They've been taken down. And if you were a careful watcher, you will notice that one of the first times that Anne talks to her mom about these ghosts, she says that they said they're going to take down the curtains. So you were kind of expecting it. But I will just say right now, if you're watching and you are a little suspicious about this photosensitivity thing, those kids wake up to the curtains being down and they were asleep. If this was real, they would have just died in their sleep. Right? Because the curtains were gone. So it really makes you question the photosensitivity part.
But again, even if it was real, there's a good reason why it wouldn't affect them now, which we're getting to.
Are you saying there's a twist ending,
John? But yeah, the servants are acting like, you know, have you ever exposed them to light? How do you know it's, you know?
And Grace puts the barrel of a gun. She puts the shotgun up at them and says, give me your keys back. At this point, she's done with these servants. She doesn't trust them at all anymore.
And then I just love it when they do hand over the keys and exit the house. And from my perspective as a first-time viewer at this point, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Get them out.
There's something wrong with him. And not to mention, J-Dub, something we didn't mention, which was a while ago, right before she was going out into the fog where she meets her husband, she mentions, oh, there must be some graveyard around here. Look for it. And then you see, she leaves and you see Mr. Tuttle and Mrs. Mills covering up these gravestones with leaves. They know something's going on. So don't trust them. Like, we as the viewers don't trust them. So, of course, whenever Grace is kind of standing up for herself and saying, give me those keys back, here's a shotgun to your face, you're like, yeah, that's right.
Well, what was really creepy about that earlier moment is because Mrs. Mills says now she thinks the house is haunted. And Mr. Mills or Mr. Tuttle is like, so when should we bring all this to light? And she's like, not yet. And then she points to the grave and he starts to cover it up. Yeah. So like at that point, we're just like, nope, we knew it. They're up to no good.
Yeah.
These people need to go. And so when she does order them off with a gun and ask for the keys back, we're happy as an audience. But then they walk out and she's like, I don't know about you, Mr. Tuttle, but
I've reached the end of
my tether.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and she says, God. We best uncover the graves, Mr. Tuttle. Right. So all of a sudden, we're going to find out what's up with this graveyard. Right. So the way that this, and once again, I just want to emphasize the pacing of this movie and the way it builds is flawless. That's why I say that it's a work of cinematic art, because it gives you just enough information to be suspicious, but not enough to where you kind of figure things out really quickly. Right.
Yeah, because we actually talked about this, the nature of movies with twist endings is that there's a very delicate balance of what you give away. And we were I mentioned in the context of a movie that we both loved, Knives Out, which is a supremely entertaining movie, but in my opinion,
gives it away too early.
A little, it makes it too easy to figure out. It's still a great movie, but what I love with this film is that I didn't see the ending coming. And yeah, I know now, and on future viewings, I'm going to know, but that initial viewing is really important.
Yes.
It's an experience that you carry on with each subsequent viewing. And so now I get to be excited every time I go back and watch the movie, picking up on the little details and enjoying the fact that I didn't catch them the first time around.
And I didn't either. I mean, I was 11, so that's not saying much. I didn't catch many things when I was 11. But I think this is hands down, we're coming up on my favorite scenes. There's what we kind of call a double reveal, right? We have the kids going on their own adventure and we have Grace kind of investigating, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're ready to move on, J-Dubs, I will. I just didn't want to rush you. Yeah. But so we have Anne, right, being all like Spider Pig going down the side of the house. And then we have this classic, her making fun of Nicholas for being a baby. Nicholas goes, don't leave me, or, don't go by yourself. And she's like, oh, it's just because you don't want to be alone. He's like, no, I'll do it. And then he climbs down. You're like, go, Nicholas, go, right? Be brave. And the music in the scene, John.
Which, by the way, I want to mention that the music was composed by the director of the film, which,
like you said, overachiever.
I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. Alejandro Amenábar. It's something to that effect. But yeah, directed the film, wrote the film.
Like, what have you done with your life lately?
Scored the film. In the chat, I was like, overachiever. It's like the music is so good and so creepy and sets the vibe. And yeah, it's just my hat's off to the director because he did a great job. But anyway.
Yeah, the music when Nicholas is climbing down the side of this pipe, right? And you're also wondering, are these children going to fall to their deaths too, right? As a first-time viewer. So you have them going down and they're like, we're going to go find Dad, right? Which is like, aw, you kids, it's so sweet. And then we cut to Grace going up to the servants' quarters. So this is that double reveal. I mean, this is why this movie is so great, is that you have two things going on that then lead to the same thing.
Which we actually haven't talked about the setup for this, which was much earlier in the film when Grace comes upon the book
of the dead.
Of the dead. And she's like, they're all asleep. No, ma'am. they're not asleep.
They're
They're dead.
Yeah.
Which, that's not creepy at all.
And this is, if I'm not mistaken, historically accurate. In the 1800s, you would pose the dead person and take a picture, thinking that their spirit would live on in that final picture. In my undergrad, I was a photo assistant student thing. I was just scanning a bunch of photos, and there were tons of just people dead in the 1800s. I'm like, why am I scanning these? These are creepy. And I remember being told this was a way for, there were two reasons. One, for them to live on. Two, if they were an outlaw, it was to prove that they were dead. So I literally was scanning photos also of Billy the Kid riddled with bullet holes and all of that, right? So there was this proof of death, but also kind of having them live on through the dead, right? So we have Grace going up the stairs. Not creepy at all, guys. Everything's fine, right? She's going up there, and then the kids are just la-di-da-di-da, skipping through the fog. And then Anne goes, look, there's graves, right? Have we not been leading up to this the whole time? With the uncovering of the gravestone.
The way all this stuff cuts together, it's just
brilliant. Brilliant.
As they're seeing the name on the engraved Graces, opening up, going through and seeing this photo of 3 dead people, and guess who they are?
Lydia, Mills, and Tuttle. God, I can't remember his name. But right, so we have, and she found it under a mattress, so it was being hidden away specifically from her. So she finds this picture of the dead servants, and then Anne sees each of their names on these headstones, and she shouts back to Nicholas. And this is where, once again, this movie has the best setup and payoff. They set up the fact that Anne teases Nicholas. So when she goes, Nicholas, they're dead, get away from them, right? Nicholas is like, stop teasing me. You're so mean. I don't believe you this time. She's like, I'm being honest this time. I swear they're dead. They're ghosts. And he goes, but you said that ghosts wear white sheens and have chains, right? So he's going back to like not believing Anne. She goes, I swear they're dead. Come to me. You have to run. All right. And then like, they're like 5 feet away from Nicholas. And then he turns, and this is actually, once again, these child actors, so good. He looks back and goes, whoa, and then runs toward his sister, right? So we have them being pursued by these dead servants while their mother is running from the servants' corners to try and find her children to protect them because their servants are dead. Yeah, and if, as a first-time viewer, the fact that the servants are dead distract you from perhaps other people being dead.
And they are so scary.
They just walk.
And then, she's got the gun and she, fires at them. And Miss Mills is like, the tuberculosis took care of us long ago.
Which, going back to foreshadowing, earlier in the movie, she said that this island, which is off the coast of England somewhere, I don't know geography, she said that the island had been evacuated because of tuberculosis in the late 1800s. Which at the time, you're like, this is interesting world building. But it's like, no, this is important. Because that's what killed the servants. All 3 of them died from tuberculosis.
And then...
Which, thank goodness, I'll just say right now, get vaccinated. I have a TB shot. I hope John does too. We have the modern technology to get rid of these diseases. That is my TED Talk. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Do you have a TB shot, John? Now I'm worried.
No, I did. But I was just thinking, were we not as medically advanced back then? Was that a thing?
Especially in gynecology was totally fine back then too. I don't know what you're talking about. They just weren't sticking their hand up there and figuring it out as they went along.
So then they're running into the house, and Grace tells the children, stay together, hide. And so they run up, they hide in a closet. And this is
a wardrobe, please. We're in England, John.
A wardrobe. And this is where things turn.
Oh.
And Mrs. Mills starts talking to Grace through the door and saying,
all 3 of them too are just standing there right by the door. It's creepy.
And Grace is like, just leave us in peace. And they're like, and if we did, do you think the intruders? Well,
the intruders, John?
eventually they'll find you.
Yes.
And of course, and it's around this time that, you know, the children are up in the wardrobe. They're hearing, you know,
breathing. And then Anne says, Nicholas, stop breathing like that. And he does, but they still hear breathing, John.
Oh, by the way, side note, there's so many like mentions throughout this film at that point by Anne, but also earlier with Grace, where she's like, stop breathing. Yes. Stop breathing. You know, is
this foreshadowing, John?
Yeah.
Yes,
really
because Anne, when she got mad at her mom, was going,
yeah,
right,
really
breathing like that.
Caught on to that stuff on my second viewing. I was like,
yes, right? When you know, you're like, ah. So we have them hiding in this wardrobe. And when I was a kid, three parts of it scared me. First, whenever Grace is checking out the music room and the door slams. Second, when the old lady looks like Anne. And then this third time, when they open the wardrobe, it's the old lady.
And then the servants are like,
it's too late.
It's too late. They found the children. You're going to have to go and speak to them yourself, which sets the stage for this, what we expect from a classic sort of ghost story horror movie, where the protagonist is going to have to go face the ghosts themselves.
It's the boss fight.
Yeah. So we're all set for this, and she opens the door, and what we find is not what we expect. And this point in the movie where I was like, oh my God. Right.
So I think I have a couple of, let me see. I have a couple of quotes. But she's what we call spirit writing. There's this old blind lady, and she's a medium, and she's like, looking off into like space and just kind of writing. And then there's a man next to her who takes it and says what it says. Right. And she goes, what happened to you? What happened to you? And they go, something about a pillow. And then, oh my God, here it comes, Sean. Then the medium says, is that how she killed you? Oh, holy crap.
Everything starts spinning.
Everything is like, what? You rethink this whole movie as a first time viewer. Exactly. Holy shiitake mushrooms. And then the kids are yelling, we're not dead. We're not dead. And then she's just writing insanely, we're not dead. We're not dead. And then Nicole Kidman's character, Grace, comes in and she's ripping up the papers. And then we finally see it from the living's perspective. And it looks like these papers, there's nothing there. We don't see Grace. And we're like, this whole time we've been following the ghosts. That's why I love this movie, John. Is this not an amazing movie?
And I want to point this out. Patter, it's not about it being a scare. It's about this emotional reveal of the story we've been following is we've been with the ghosts.
Yes.
This whole time. So it's not so much that it's so terrifying. No, it's not about that. It's like, oh my God.
And that's the thing, is that as someone who has watched so many horror movies, you always follow the living and you always assume the intruders are dead, right? This movie teaches us that you're the intruder. Those spirits, those out of bodies, were there first, and you're the one that is intruding on them. And so we, the living, are the intruders and not the dead, and that's why it's called the others, right? We are the others, not them.
I was so excited when this reveal happened, because it's a sort of a hazard of watching as many movies as I do, that I tend to pick up on things. And okay, Patter is being Patter. I wasn't like, I forgot who you were for a second, Patter. I'm sorry.
Patter, we would never doubt you. Not even for a second.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Medium. Oh, Patter. You can't see it, but I'm slapping my knee. Patter, see yourself out with that pun. Okay. Patter, we love you. Never change. Never change.
At least it wasn't just me this time.
No, I did totally went over my head too. Which I have to say, sorry, just once off topic, John. Are you ready for this? This never happens. One of Patter's classics is the Father's Day stream on Here Be Dragons, where he was like, I love Ned. Good head on his shoulders. I dropped my phone and laughed. I was almost on the floor. He's so funny. I love you, Potter. Anyways, medium level scare. I love you, Potter. We never doubted you for a second.
And of course, I also got like a simultaneous joy because who do we see in this scene but Michelle Fairley, Catelyn Stark.
Holy crap, it's Catelyn Stark. And not only that, but I love this scene because she asserts herself. We've just seen, okay, so we now put ourselves in the perspective of the living. And they've just seen, Nicole Kidman's character move the table, ripped up these papers, right? And so Catelyn Stark, I'm going to call her that. She was like, no, husband, we've done it your way by ignoring things. Now we're going to do it my way, and we're going to move you, me, and Victor out of this house. And that's when we learn that and he says, Victor's been seeing this little girl, and we know that her mom killed her children, went mad and killed her children. So now we're like, oh crap, the whole mommy went mad means that Grace literally murdered her children.
Yeah. And can I say that bravo to to Victor's mother, Catelyn Stark herself, because she is doing what all characters in horror films should do when they're in the haunted house.
GTFO. Get out. Get out. Just like the movie Get Out. Get out.
Yeah.
Also Get Out. And I also saw Us lately, and they are killing it with that. And I'm glad to see people of color finally having a place in horror. It is a very white genre. Very white.
Yeah, we will. I haven't seen Us yet, but we are definitely covering Get Out.
Us definitely scares me because intruders in general, into my, like, people just coming into your house and screwing with you is like the scariest to me because I have anxiety. So it was really great.
Yeah, things turned out all right for them.
Everything was fine. What are you talking about? So this medium scene, right? We finally realize why Anne has seen this old woman so many times, because she's a medium. She was attempting to come into contact with them, right? This was her goal, was to talk to Anne.
Yeah, and
guys, my cape is kind of acting up. Sorry. These things are really. This is not good. The bad guy can just grab the cape. What the heck, DC? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, DC sucks because Marvel rules.
Marvel's the best.
All the DC fans are coming after.
Don't at me, DC. No, guys, obviously I like DC.
No,
Superman is overpowered though, and okay, John, give me 2 seconds. Superman should be called Superboy, and Supergirl should be Superwoman. It's bullcrap. She's older than her cousin, and she's better. Kara Zor-El for the win.
No, actually, both are coming after me.
Thank you, Scott. You're so diplomatic. We love you.
Both are coming after me because the DC fans are going to think I'm being serious, and the Marvel fans are going to come after me for being sarcastic.
Exactly. Look, if it's X-Men, then I'm a Marvel fan. But if it's anything else, then I'm like, I'm a DC fan. Don't at me, Marvel fans.
Well, X-Men are the best when it comes to Marvel. So.
A super team is the best. Why would you just have one when you can have more than one? Also, I still haven't seen the New Mutants movie, but I want to. Oh, look at him downing that OJ.
Yep. But so then we do get then to the scene out in the hallway where we get Grace really processing everything and fully understanding and remembering that she killed her children.
And her children are remembering with her, and they're all kind of huddled together in the hallway.
And of course, this happened because she just felt lost and lost control. Essentially, her husband died in the war. She, was completely abandoned, and she just seemingly lost her control. And
they had also surrendered to the Nazis as well. We have to also put this in historical context. She was being occupied by Nazis. And guys, newsflash, Nazis are bad. Hey, all you Marvel fans, you know, Captain America punches Nazis, all right? They're kind of racist buttholes. I'm trying not to cuss too much because I don't want to demonetize us, but Nazis are bad. So they were occupied by Nazis. Her husband wasn't there. She was expected to raise these 2 children, right? But I do want to go back to the fact that the servants just disappeared. Guess what? It's because everyone was dead. So she didn't see them anymore because she went from the world of the living to the world of the dead. So that's why the servants disappeared. It's not because they were bad workers, okay? Got to stand up for the working class. It was because she died.
But see, this is where I'm like, we don't actually know that for certain because it's sort of ambiguous, because I found it implied that she eventually does what she does because she's abandoned and isolated.
Okay.
So I actually find it kind of creepy that we don't really know. We don't know if they really did completely abandon her, or
Potter also has a good point. That's also why the postman stopped delivering. That's why her letter didn't come out, because no one was living there. And what I like about this movie is it also makes you question what is living and what is dead, right? We follow them as a family and they feel alive to us, but they're not technically, right?
And this is why, again, I said earlier that it's all about sort of context. Do the children suffer from this illness, or is that sort of part of the narrative that Grace has built up?
Yeah.
Because
that's why I said allegedly they have photosensitivity.
Because they're all dead.
Yeah.
And to keep them all in the dark and away from the light.
And we have Anne going, "Mommy, it doesn't hurt," right? She's and just like the servants have said, we go back now that you know this, the servants were like, "Hey, have you checked to see if the light hurts them?" The answer is no, because they already dead. So even if they had this condition, which I'm not even sure they did, they definitely don't now, because they're gone. They're dead. And they have unfinished business, right? In spirit lore, if you are suddenly killed and don't realize you're dead, then you stay there. Or if you have unfinished business. And I think in this case, this family had both. They didn't know they were dead and they had unfinished business, right? So we have Grace, Nicole Kidman's character, saying, "I remember putting the pillow over you and I remember pulling the trigger in with the shotgun, and then nothing. And then I heard your laughing and I thought God had given you back to me." Right? So they just moved on.
I just really love the fact that she says she pulled the trigger and nothing happened.
Yeah.
For her, that was the experience, that she pulled the trigger and then it was as if time was dialed back. And she says she thought God had given her a second chance.
Exactly. And Jenna has a really good point. And the keeping the house dark was a way of keeping in denial, right? It was literally her keeping this secret in the dark. And if I could go a little meta, I think this is a commentary on family secrets in general. And, you know, I don't want to get too personal, but there are secrets in your family that when you learn about them, a lot more things make sense. And for example, once again, I don't want to get super personal. This is totally not my experience. But when you find out that someone in your family was a child molester or was, you know, a robber, something, right? It's like, oh, it makes sense why they were really shady then, right? So I think a lot of this movie is about keeping secrets and how once they're in the light, it's better for everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry, J-Dubs, I just dropped that bomb on you.
No, it's actually reminding me of, I hesitate to say this because it's a completely different context, but it's a line that I really love. And I think you could almost apply it to a multitude of different situations, which is in Watchmen. One of the final lines of that series is, wounds need air, or something to that effect. And so it's kind of in that same vein of you know, the curtains needed to be opened up. They needed to accept what had happened to them. And that's when the fog lifts. And
yeah, the fog is finally gone, right? And we get this amazing scene of the a live family leaving the house. And we get this chanting that is a little bit, it's very horror movie of, we finally see the rationale and the motivation of the ghost, which is, this is our house. And that's why I love this movie, right? It shows you that you're the ones intruding because these people were here first and they are still here because of some trauma. And it's actually you that are the others, right? And they're saying, what, this house is ours? I think I have the exact quote somewhere. No one can make us leave this house. This house is ours, right?
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, like, what was the situation with Mrs. Mills, Mr. Tuttle, and Lydia? Because in the beginning of the movie, they're shown approaching the house, but were they there the whole time? And
that's an excellent question. Yeah.
And did they need to do that to sort of ease their presence to Grace and the children?
Yeah.
Because it was something that had to be revealed to them, and they couldn't just come out and say it. So that was their way of doing that. But had they been there the whole time? Yeah.
I took it as they were in the servants' quarters, kind of just chilling out, being ghosts. And then they saw that she was putting, that the servants were gone and that she was putting an ad in the mail. And that then they showed up, right? Which is the beginning of the story. We kind of come full circle. I really, you're right, Jenna. I think that they were like, oh, we're just some random people looking for work showing up here. Right. And I think that this, one of my favorite lines from the movie, once you've seen, the big reveal, that when you rewatch it, it makes a lot of sense whenever Mrs. Mills says, I feel like we never quite left this house. Right. And it's literally true. Right. They are like the family that we follow. They are tethered to the house because not only because that's where they died, but because that's where their unfinished business is. Right.
And I do like, watching this the second time, it was great to see it from the point of view of the servants, because they pretty much acknowledge that they have to adjust to this new situation themselves, that now they're not the only ones haunting the house.
Yeah.
They're, where Mrs. Mills says, we have to, she says about the living and the dead, but she says we have to learn to live together. And that really is what needs to happen, between them and Grace and the children, where now they're essentially becoming their own family unit, where they have to adjust to having basically new members of their family.
And like Mrs. Mills said, there will be more intruders. Sometimes we'll sense them and sometimes we won't. And getting a little personal, I do believe in spirits. So I think that the living and the dead do need to live together peacefully. And I agree with the kind of the ethos argument of this movie, which is that the living deserve to be here, to live here, to use the right verb. And the dead also deserve to be there if you believe in spirits. If you don't, then ignore everything I'm saying. But, we should live in harmony together. And that's basically kind of the idea that Mrs. Mill has taken. And she's about 50 years dead at this point. So she has a little bit of a meta view of it, right? Whereas the characters that we follow are more newly dead. And so there is this idea of coexistence, right? Just as Marvel and DC must coexist. Wait, let me get my cape. Supergirl. Okay, Stephen, fine, you can ignore my views.
But of course,
everyone who's like, oh, Amy, you're smart, but you believe in ghosts, so I immediately discount your views. Whatever.
All the fans.
I've had personal experiences, so Stephen, I love you, but here you go.
But on the comparison with Marvel DC, the fans will now start arguing about which one is dead and which one is alive.
They're both thriving and surviving, and they're both great franchises. And yeah. Oh my God, everyone in the chat's like, screw you, Amy. We don't believe you. Whatever. I love you all. I love you all.
Yeah, like for me, I just choose to to not necessarily either believe it or think about it.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you.
Because it helps me sleep at night.
If that helps you sleep at night, that's fine.
And I do like what Mrs. Mills says, which you spoke of a little bit with, you know, and others will come. Sometimes we'll sense them. Sometimes we won't. This notion that they'll just go on and it's something that they're just going to have to deal with occasionally. But I feel like when you know if you're a ghost and you know what's going on, it's probably a bit easier to handle than if you think you're still alive.
Also, I just want to say my views on ghosts are not the official views of John Webster Film. Please subscribe to him. Thank you. This is just me. It is a little known fact about me that I believe in ghosts. So take with that what you will. I also know Chinese, so I'm not dumb. That's all I'm saying.
Which those two things go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, yeah, no. I did not know this about you, Amy.
This is my coming out moment, different from when I came out as a bisexual. This is my other coming out moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cam. You're so sweet.
Okay, so I can't believe it, but we've actually arrived at the end of the film, and we're at roughly the 2-hour mark, which is an achievement for us.
We didn't go over.
Yeah.
Professional.
We may have to go over by a couple minutes just to uphold our standard.
Of course.
I mean,
and I've officially emptied the bottle of sake, so good stuff.
I've had sake exactly one time in my life.
You've had alcohol at all in your life?
I know, shocking. It was when I was in martial arts and I had achieved my black belt after much hell. And part of the induction was that they had me swallow a jalapeno pepper followed by a shot of sake.
You mean hazing?
Yeah.
It's not it's hazing, John.
Exactly. Yeah.
Come on. You can say it. Your trauma. It was hazing.
It is trauma. And
I thought it would be vodka. That's weird that they made you take a shot of sake. Huh.
No, it's an experience I'll never forget.
But I do want to plug the sake, though. It's called Bride of the Fox, also known as Junmai Ginjo. It's very good. # sponsor us, Konbara sake.
The trauma is still ever present, Amy. I'm sorry.
Okay, but alcohol can be fun, kids. Don't let John talk you out of drinking because it's awesome. I mean, don't do drugs, kids. Stay in school. Speaking as someone who's been in school forever and is still in school, stay in school.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen nails it here. So it was, it kind of made sense to me that.
Karate. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so, but do you have any more closing thoughts on the film?
I think that what was most impactful for me about this film, once again, is that it, in the end, I'm sorry for those of you who haven't seen it, the twist ending is that this whole time we were following the story of the ghosts. And I, once again, want to emphasize that they were there first, right? And we finally horror film was always focused on the living, and we feel for them, and we think the ghosts are the others, right? Which is why the name of this movie is so impactful, which is that actually we're the others. We're the ones encroaching on their territory. And so the reason that I love this film and why I knew you would like it, John, is that it's not just about a twist ending. It's about changing your perspective on horror as a genre. And I think it's even more impactful, not to diminish your viewing of it, John, but it's even more impactful as someone who has seen multiple horror films, because you always get it one way and you finally get it the other, right? And I think that that's what's really great about this film, is that you have sympathy for what we usually think of as the others, right? And we also, I think in the end, have sympathy for Grace, right? We see that her husband just kind of up and left her. And then he came back as a ghost and then up and left her again. Like, he's not worth it, girl. You do you. Anyway, but we really do get this view of a woman who was desperate and who was left and abandoned. And she had a breakdown and she made a very impulsive decision that was wrong. And she will be suffering the consequences of that for the rest of her afterlife. And I think that's why this movie, to me, has stuck with me since I first saw it in 2003-ish. And I think that, first of all, Nicole Kidman acts the crap out of this movie. And I think just for the acting and for the cinematography, you should watch this movie.
Yeah. And we didn't really mention that. I mean, her faith is shaken.
Yes.
At the end of the film, because she says to her daughter,
I don't know what happens after.
I'm no wise.
Is there a children's limbo? Yeah.
And
she says at some point in the film that God would not let that happen. God would send you to heaven or hell. He would not let you, kind of be this like kind of spirit in the living world, but not really. But the answer is actually she didn't know anything. And she was just going by what she had learned. And I think that the religious aspects of this movie are also another reason that I really like it, because it makes us know, like, I'm Buddhist. That doesn't mean that Buddhism has all the answers to things. And I'm quite frankly constantly shaken about my faith. And I think that Grace also is shaken of, she tells children about, I don't even know if there is a limbo, right? She doesn't actually know in the end. And this really shakes her to her core. And I think that's another really impactful part of this movie. And there are so many themes in this movie that this is my 10th. I think I watched it for the 10th time by myself, and then the 11th time with you and Micah. I love you, Micah. It's like, I still am shaken by this movie. It makes me question a lot about the afterlife, if there is one. And it also makes me question, what is the meaning of life itself, right? Well, what are we to be alive and what are we to be dead? Which, once again, to plug my channel, George R. R. Martin has a lot to say about life and death. So, and my latest video, we talk a lot about that. Okay, John, go to you.
Yeah. Just to make a quick comment on the film, I'm even more astonished that Nicole Kidman didn't win Best Actress that year.
Don't get me started on the Academy.
She ended up being nominated for Moulin Rouge, which I can't argue with, because her performance as Satine is stunning. But I remember hearing a lot of talk that year about some people thought she should have been nominated for this instead. But the Academy often kind of factors in, if there's been multiple performances that year by the actor who's been nominated, they tend to kind of factor that in. So I find it ridiculous that she lost, and they ended up giving it to her the year after, which is what they're always doing. They're always making these horrible decisions and then
they made Leo DiCaprio wait 7 nominations for this. John, you and I, this is another reason we're friends. We pay attention to the Academy, but we also loathe them so much because they're wrong all the time.
I mean, I say I have a love-hate relationship with the Oscars, but it's mostly hate. But see, I can't completely dismiss them, because otherwise I'd be a hypocrite every time they make a good decision and I cheer.
And you praise them. Yeah.
Because I always think back to 2003 when Return of the King swept the Oscars, and I was like jumping out of my seat with every victory. If I think that matters at all, then I can't say that the rest of it doesn't. So I just have to say that I'm mad at the decisions they make. I can't dismiss them entirely, unfortunately.
And, John, we've talked about how I chose this movie for Joef. Once again, hashtag Joef, John Webster film. And that is because I think that this movie is acted well, and it's cinematically just a work of art. And even those who don't care for horror can enjoy and appreciate this film and its themes. And the mood, like I said, it's a little bit like a Tim Burton film in that it really sets a mood. And I really think that those of you who are watching who are maybe not super into horror, The Others is still the movie for you no matter what. Even if you're super anti-horror, The Others is still a movie for you.
Yeah, I'm not a horror fan. There are exceptions, especially when it's the genre is blended with something else. A case in point being Alien, which was one of my favorite films, and that's both horror and science fiction. And this, of course, is horror, but it's also a period drama. So, of course, I loved it.
Of course. Can you also share Steven's comment, Joef? Because thank you. I need to make this a thing. Thank you. Joef. That's us. That's me and him. Oh, crap. It's the other way. We are Joef.
Potter, I'm not even going to dignify that.
Potter, get out.
Just go.
Get out. Just kidding, Potter. We love you.
But yeah, I'm very happy that I'm going to say that you made me watch this, but it didn't take that much. It didn't take that much convincing just because you knew what to aim for. The fact that it was a period film, which I didn't even really know at first. But as soon as I read up on the film, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. And,
it is.
And of course, there was
I love 40s films.
And of course, there was the added element of, if I'm going to ask her to be my co-host, I have to give a little.
You do, and you can't just ignore a whole genre, especially in the month of October, John. Next October, I'm getting him to do another horror film, and it's going to be great. And I'm going to pick the right one, just like I did this time. So look forward to that. October 2021, Joef, we're coming at you.
So yeah, and you just you already plugged your channel again. Right. So I'm going to just say that next week we have our Focus on Quentin Tarantino stream, which is going to be so much fun. We're just going to go crazy on that, because the trouble is going to be making sure that we don't spend too much time on one thing, because we're going to want to jump from film to film.
And the week after that, for A Nightmare Before Christmas, do we not have a couple of amazing guests that we want to talk about, John?
Do we?
There's this guy named Stanley Stark.
Yeah. So
Stoner Stark.
So we have this unknown guy who's kind of
Steven Stark kind of has this thing
on the periphery of
he's kind of a thing
fandom. And I've decided to do him a favor and give him a spotlight.
You invited him on your channel. Yeah, you're so sweet. Okay, seriously though, Steven Stark, he's a great guy. He's basically dating John, and he's my brother. And he's been on for Hero on this channel with me and John. Oh God, I did it right. Yes. No, dang it. And yeah, no, Steven Stark is going to be on, and also my fandom crush, Lady Triple, will be on.
Which I'm super excited about.
Another blonde girl who likes hip hop. Yes.
And originally, Amy, you were going to have to take off early for that stream, but now you don't have to. So
I've moved things around so that I can be there for the full 7 hours that we're going to spend on one of the best Tim Burton films in the whole world, which is A Nightmare Before Christmas.
Which actually is hilarious saying that, because we watched a Tim Burton movie last night, which was Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd!
Which I think by the end of that watch party, there were some people who hadn't seen it before who thought I was an absolute lunatic by the end of that watch party, because I find that movie to be utterly hysterical and delightful.
I love that movie. I love it. He's the Nightmare Barber of Fleet Street. It's totally cool. He's just and then just totally fine.
For the record,
and I'm really sad that was our last Halloween watch party, though. And I'm sorry to see you go spooky month. I love you.
I will say that movie came out about, 13 years ago. And I remember going to see that in theaters with my mom, because she was my movie going watch partner from way back, and her and I were dying of hysterics when the credits rolled on that film, and everybody in the theater was like, "What is wrong with those people?"
It's a satire. It obviously is. I don't know when people don't see that.
But yeah, we are going to be covering The Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's going to be a blast. I can't wait to have both Stephen back and to have Lady Triple on for the first time. That's going to be so much fun.
Exciting.
And then there's still going to be lots more coming up. Don't forget, I've got my interview with Doug Adams, author of the music of the Lord of the Rings films, coming up in November. We've got then the return of the Knights of Kira with Colette, and then we're going to have in December all of Lord of the Rings.
All the Lord of the Rings, also with Colette. We're going to do some amazing feminist and queer analysis. It's going to be great. It's going to be me and two guys, but two of my favorite feminists, John and Jared. So
good. I'm glad you're not too harsh on that, but we are the three Knights of Kira, so
we are. And once again, check out our Focus on Kira stream, and we're gonna focus on Quentin Tarantino here coming up.
Stephen, I cannot wait for that. That's gonna be so great. And like,
I'm so excited for Nightmare Before Christmas, which is the best Thanksgiving movie, as Stephen has told us. The best Thanksgiving movie. It's not a Halloween movie, it's not a Christmas movie, it's a Thanksgiving movie.
Yeah, and like, I just want to say that I knew Stephen liked The Nightmare Before Christmas, but when he started talking to me about like how much he absolutely loves that movie, it's going to be a blast. And Stephen, I really hope you sing your heart out. That's just going to be so much fun. Okay, so that pretty much wraps things up. Amy, thank you once again for introducing me to this movie. I loved it. I watched it twice. Obviously got more out of it the second time, and it won't be the last time I watch it. I guarantee that. So.
Yes, and thank you so much. I'm excited. Now this is my second stream as your co-host, and we're getting a rhythm going, and I'm really excited to keep going with the hashtag Joeth Magic.
Yeah. So, okay, and thank you all for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next week. For now, this is John and Supergirl, and we're signing off. Have a wonderful night. Bye.